When I got to Vietnam, I was a 19-year-old kid. When I left Vietnam, I was a 20-year-old man.
If you didn't think on your feet real quick, you'd be laying on your back.
We all trusted each other with our lives.
Every detachment had a different mission.
Contrary to what the history books might say to you about Vietnam today, this was a volunteer squadron.
Every other outfit, Army and Air Force, they have a home back here in the States somewhere, and we don't.
Bullet came in that hit me, came in right here and cut the wire to my mic, and on the back of my helmet was spelled kid, and it dotted the I.
Their life meant nothing if one of us was in trouble. They did what it took to get us out.
But when we got there, we didn't have much of anything.
Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being scared out of your wits and doing your job. That's courage.
We were the McHale's Navy of Vietnam, a cross between the Baa Black Sheep and McHale's Navy.
It was well known that if you got in trouble, you better know the frequency to call for the Seawolves, because we would come, whether it was 2 in the morning or in black and weather and rain, monsoon. You're never going to leave anybody on the ground. If you put them in there, by God, you're going back and getting them, even if it costs you.
Just flew in horrendous conditions. We used to fly at night 100 feet over the trees. Somebody shot us, we dropped a flare and then rolled in and shot.
This is Seawolf 3-4, Roger. We are directly to your north this time, and we're going to start putting fire in on this canal. It's running east-west from your location. Understand that is cleared, and that's where you took the fire from, over. Yeah, this is Seawolf 3-4. This is Charlie. Hold off. I'm having trouble with Jackie over here. He doesn't know what's going on, over.
Vietnam, 1967. For the first time in history, a unique helicopter squadron is established by the Navy. They're known as the HAL-3 Seawolves. Part of the Brownwater Navy, their mission is to provide close air support for the river patrol boats and riverine forces in the Mekong Delta, insertions and extractions of SEALs, Army, and Special Ops.
They had got all the old Army helicopters that they didn't want. And these Navy guys were patching them up and tying them together and making them work.
Vietnam was jungle warfare, where the U.S. Army, Marines, and Air Force battled for control. Meanwhile, little is known of the war the Seawolves and the Brownwater Navy were fighting in the Delta. And yet, for 5 years, the approximately 2,600 maintainers, pilots, gunners, and support personnel that comprised the Seawolves would patrol the Delta, but they would remain forgotten in the early histories of the Vietnam War. The squadron was established and disestablished in Vietnam and never spent a day inside the United States. They were unlike any other squadron. They used hand-me-down Hueys and had few mechanical supplies. Yet, they volunteered for duty, operating from 9 detachments with headquarters at Vung Tau and eventually Binh Tui. They became indispensable to the men they saved and the most decorated squadron in naval aviation history.
What's a Seawolf? You athletes may have heard this. More tech stuff, look at this. There we go. You athletes may have heard this come from your opponents mockingly, while on the benches and bleachers, or even asked the question yourself, what's a Seawolf? If so, you weren't the first. Kevin Kelsey was the OG AD for Pacifica. When Kelsey was on the lookout for a mascot that would capture who we are as a school, an image that we could stand behind, he already had something in mind. A Seawolf. But like a baby just born into the world having an identity before knowing who he or she is, we knew who we were, the Seawolves, before knowing what that even meant to us. So the obvious question that followed was, what's a Seawolf? Like searching for a truth waiting to be found, he scoured sources, pages, articles, anything that mentioned the name Seawolf. but nothing that felt like stepping into being. It wasn't until something came up about a U.S. Navy unit in Vietnam called the HAL 3 Seawolves. Kelsey began to read further into it, a volunteer unit from humble beginnings, commissioned and decommissioned in Vietnam with no base in the States to call home. A unit that felt unwanted upon returning home from a divisive war. They fought valiantly against the enemy and courageously protected and defended the friendlies in over 120,000 missions. They were inventive, clever, persistent, and efficient. They were and are resilient and the most decorated unit in U.S. naval history. This was it. This was who we aspired to be. And stepping into it has served others in more ways than we could have imagined. Kelsey contacted Joe Crutcher, former maintainer for the Seawolves, and one of the point persons for connecting the Seawolf organization. His daughter Shannon is here with us today, and my main point of contact with the Seawolves. When asked if we could adopt the name on behalf of all Seawolves, Joe considered it an honor. Since then, we have become a sort of home for the Seawolves. At our homecoming events, we have met these men and their families during luncheons and have honored them during the halftime of the boys' basketball game. As we move along, we have continued to find ways to honor them and make them feel like they are welcomed home. We will continue to see how God uses this connection to bring him glory and honor and carry on the privilege of being called Seawolves. Having served 8 years in the Marine Corps myself, training under men and women who themselves were shaped by years of courage and sacrifice, I cannot stress enough how important it is for us to remember those who have gone before. Their lives are woven with ours. For we would not be where we are and who we are today were it not for their hands that built the world we know today. Their hearts that loved the ones we love today. Their feet that walked into battle in the hope that we won't have to someday. Pacifica is proud to be able to honor these men and their families by wearing tags that hold the names of the Seawolves who served. We started a practice of officially assigning tags to student athletes that will be carried with them for the rest of their time at Pacifica. And though I'm not a coach, I am wearing a tag of one of the 44 who gave their lives in battle. Arnold Barden, Jr. And I would like to end by reading a portion of what the coaches say when the athletes are about to receive their tags. We are Seawolves. We train as a pack, we fight as a pack, we suffer as a pack, we triumph as a pack. You wear the tags representing those who served as Seawolves. Each name is tied to a heroic man who fought against a formidable and aggressive enemy. Each name is tied to a courageous family who supported and encouraged the actions of that man. Each name is tied to a precious life that was made from and either has or will one day return to his creator. You wear a tag that represents the blood, sweat, and tears shed between brothers through dedication, perseverance, and sacrifice to duty and to others. As Pacifica Seawolf athletes, strive for the traits these men possess, along with self-discipline, humility, and resilience, never forgetting those who have gone before you and how they have set, maintained, and went above and beyond the standards. Together we press on towards excellence. As your coaches, we wear the tags of those who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to others. Each name is tied to a battle fought, a family grieved, and a life lost. We will always be reminded of the words of Jesus Christ, love each other in the same way I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. And though these tags are small, they bear the burden of a legacy before us. May the weight of them keep us humble and remind us to be strong, fight on, and remain united. We train as a pack, we fight as a pack, we suffer as a pack, we triumph as a pack. We are Seawolves.
We had the world's best mission. I mean, absolutely the world's best mission. Our job was to be the 2nd Cavalry who rides over the hill, and the Indians have the wagon trains are all circled, and the Indians are riding around shooting flaming arrows, and we'd come over the hill with the bugles blowing, and the Indians would leave, and we'd save the settlers. Well, that was our job. All these PBRs and swift boats and tango boats and all the different types. We had 1,000 boats down there. And they were constantly being ambushed. And they were always on the short end of the stick. They were going to lose the ambush, but we'd get a scramble. We'd usually be in the air in around 2 minutes. We'd usually be overhead in 5 and save the day because the Viet Cong either had to leave or die.
Oh yeah, we're drawing fire.
There were different types of scrambles, scramble 1, 2, or 3, depending on who the friendlies were, as to what the category it was put in or how intense the contact on the ground was.
So scramble 1, you're there, you jump the bird and go, you don't have time to think of anything.
It didn't matter to us whether it was SEALs or ROKs, Republic of Korea. Those were some bad dudes.
They would have a button, a horn would go off.
Upon scramble, you got up and you ran as fast as you could, and if you were on duty, you got in the bird and away you went.
We would go from a dead sleep to full flight in under 3 minutes.
Well, they just throw in a flight chute real quick and get up on the deck because they'll be warming the chopper up and ready to take off without you. You had to get up there in a hurry.
In our attitude, I still have a lighter. It says, live by chance, love by choice, kill by profession. You had to be 100% focused every time.
They were loaded to where they would be so heavy where it couldn't fly, but it could lift off if you lightened the weight. So the gunners would get out of the helicopter, and the helicopter could lift up and start bouncing down the runway. And when it attained a speed that the gunners couldn't keep up with, they would jump in. And you didn't want to stand there and unload a bunch of ammo or unload a bunch of fuel. You got people out there in combat, they need you bad. You improvised.
And whatever it takes to get you back, that's what we did. We always flew 2 aircraft, and it was 2 teams of 4. And when you got up there, everybody knew what they were supposed to do, and you covered for each other.
We put in about 4 or 5 hot rearms. That's where you refuel, rearm, and go back out to your target. After rearming, refueling 4 or 5 times, fatigued, tired, not paying as much attention, I almost walked into the tail rotor there of the aircraft as it was turning, sitting on deck.
One of the pilots, I remember him telling me, man, you guys, you get called up and then we don't need you. He says, hey, we don't pay any attention to scramble numbers. He said, we scrambled to go to a dogfight in Thailand.
Oh, obviously it was an unbelievable adrenaline push. We were adrenaline junkies.
They would come constantly, mostly at night, where the boats had gone down, set up an ambush, or the SEALs had been inserted someplace, and they were now needing us.
The nighttime scrambles, taking off into the wild, dark sky. Not the wild blue yonder, but the wild, dark sky.
I mean, getting scrambled at 2 o'clock in the morning and so dark that you can't even see your hand in front of your face.
Then there's some hot stuff. Then your heart starts.
Your sense of smell, your sense of touch, your sense of feel.
You think that you can look down and see your heart pumping out of your chest. And I've been so frightened that I knew that my heart was beating like a drum and I could see it.
Everything is exploded.
And then the action starts, adrenaline takes over, it's all gone.
I don't ever remember being afraid. Been on many SEAL insertions, been on many a gunfight. I don't ever remember being afraid at the time, but I do remember going back to my bunk and laying in my bed and going, oh my God, I am so lucky to be alive.
Now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Mark McGregor. He served with the Seawolves from 71 to 72, and his primary job was an aviation ordnanceman. From working in the ordnance shop for months, he eventually went on to join the air crew. He learned the armament systems of the UH-1, also known as a Huey, going from detachment to detachment, fixing problems that door gunners couldn't fix locally. And after months as a roving troubleshooter, he joined a detachment to receive training as a door gunner, and did that for the rest of his tour of duty. He was awarded and pinned with the Combat Air Crew insignia, having earned it for fighting bravely in combat, supporting so many of his fellow forces, including the mobile is a Riverine Force, of which one of our other special guests, Mike Harris, has served as a radioman and a 50 cal gunner. Please give a warm welcome to Mark McGregor.
That'll be a surprise you. Thank you, Matthew. Well, appreciate everybody inviting us here for this legacy period, and wish you well on the athletic fields. I was asked to talk a little bit about a project that I started here several years ago, and it has to do with that number 44 you see up there on that patch. And those were the 44 of our members who were killed in action between 1966 and 1972. When you think about it, in fact, I just looked this up before I came up here from San Diego. We had about 600 pilots and about 700 door gunners that cycled through the squadron during that period of time. 44 out of the 1,300 plus aviators is actually a pretty small percentage. You can do the math, I'll let you take care of that, but it's a relatively small number. So anyway, I got started with this idea. If you're familiar with the annual wreaths across America, where corporations and private individuals donate Christmas wreaths, and usually it's the second or third Saturday in December. And they started at Arlington National Cemetery initially, and then eventually spread to other national cemeteries, and then there are a few municipal and private cemeteries that participate also, but they're kind of few and far between. The first time I went was about 2017, and I went to Rosecrans National Cemetery down in San Diego, and had about 4 wreaths to put up on veterans' graves, and started thinking, you know, that there's all these nice looking wreaths on these graves, but they're not really telling anybody who this person was or what he or she did. And so I decided, I knew that one of my buddies that had been killed over there, Charlie Golban, who we called Goldie, and actually who trained me to be a door gunner, was buried at the Los Angeles National Cemetery. So in 2018, my wife and I came up here and went to the National Cemetery, and I found Goldie's grave and put it on there. And also put, along with that, I put together, maybe see these little placards that explain who the person was and what they did and how they gave their life doing what they did. And so I'll leave this out in some central location over the weekend, and you can look it up, because I know a lot of you have the dog tags. And if you're not conversant with Navy jargon, you may not know what an AO, an AD, an AT, an AE, or anything like that. So this will tell you a little bit about it, and it'll help you put a face with the name. When I came back from the honor flight for the first Vietnam veterans out of San Diego, we were all Seawolves, and one of your number handed me a dog tag. And when I looked at it, I was struck by the fact that the person who's on this dog tag, Lloyd Bowles, was also an aviation ordnanceman. And so I remember that, and I remember him. Anytime I touch this, when I put it on, usually it's hanging over my desk. I don't necessarily wear it every day, but it's hanging over my desk. But anyway, so I decided that something like Wreaths Across America would be a nice thing to do for the 44. And I decided that that was going to become a bucket list project for me. And that's what the binder says. It's my bucket list project. If you're not familiar with the concept of a bucket list, a euphemism for being deceased is called kicking the bucket. And so the bucket list is, before you kick the bucket, you want to accomplish all the things that are in your bucket. And this is one of my bucket list items. I realized that I couldn't manage to be in 40 some odd different locations on the second or third Saturday of December, so I decided I would set up my own little way of paying honor and respect to the 44. And so I made up these little placards, and I usually put that and a flag. If I'm able to participate in wreaths across America, I just attach the placard to the wreath, and I leave a challenge coin, a Seawolf challenge coin on the grave, with a notation at the bottom of it that if you are the person who finds the challenge coin, feel free to take it. Because initially when I did this for my buddy Goldie, I didn't have the thing about the challenge coin written up, and it occurred to me that somebody would see that, they would be struck by two different things. One is, can I take this? And if I do, what does it mean? And so I decided to give permission in writing. You take it. If you see it there, you take it. And every time you touch it, you say Goldie's name out loud, and he will not be forgotten. And that's the same thing that I will challenge you, Pacifica Seawolves, who have the dog tags. Every time you put that on, say that man's name out loud, and he will not be forgotten. Okay? So, so far, my wife and I, and my wife, Marilyn, is an actual absolute ace grave finder. Because you would be surprised in some of these cemeteries, especially little country cemeteries in Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi and Arkansas and places like that, that nobody seems to know exactly who's buried there, except maybe the family of the person that's buried there. She has walked many miles. And in fact, when we were back in Washington, D.C. at Arlington National Cemetery, we walked over 5 miles just to find about 5 different graves or memorials back there. And when I say memorials, because some of our 44, the bodies were not recovered, they were lost for whatever reason. And so, but every one of them has a grave marker or a memorial marker in a cemetery somewhere. So if you happen to be somewhere and you can find one of those graves, and it tells you, I have a database listing in here that will tell you where your Seawolf is buried or where their memorial marker happens to be, if you're curious and you ever want to find yourself visiting that particular cemetery. But anyway, that's what we do. It's one of our travel hobbies. So far, we have managed to get to 37 of the 44. The 7 that I have left will probably be in 2025 when I head back to the Seawolf reunion. So, as I said, my challenge to you is to, when you touch that dog tag, say that person's name out loud, and that person will never be forgotten. And so then you are performing a service, and I know that that's something that's instilled in you to perform services, however humble they happen to be. And you can remember, for example, if you read Matthew 25:40, you'll find out that that's one of the things that you've been tasked with doing as a good Christian, is to provide service to your fellow man and woman. Thank you.
A big family, you might say, because everybody realizes what everybody else did. It wasn't a one man did this, it took a group effort.
Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm grateful to the Seawolves for the contribution they made to the ministry, and how inspiring they were, and how patriotic they were, and how sacrificial they were.
When you went out on detachment, you bonded with your pilots, your fellow gunners. Even to this day, you hold them a much higher accord than anybody else that you ever come in contact with in the service. It's a camaraderie you really can't explain, you just have to accept.
I think the uniqueness part of it was the fact that we were over there with very, very little training, learned as we went. We basically developed our own tactics. I always said I had more responsibility
And I had the rest of my 21-year naval career as a squadron CO and air boss on a ship, everything else. I still had more responsibilities of lieutenant junior grade, which today is absolutely out of the question. And I always compared ourselves to Pappy Boynton's black sheep in World War II. I always felt like we were the renegades of the U.S. Navy, and no one knew how to handle us, and no one knew any more than we did and didn't know what to do with us, so they just said, go do it, and we did it.
And if you've been in combat, you are closer than family. And there's no getting out of that. And I don't care if you knew the Seawolf or not, he's a Seawolf. He was there, he did the same thing. Our maintenance guys were there, and they came out to deaths and put their lives at risk to fix the aircraft out there when you're under mortar rocket attack and getting shot up and going out to and from. And only that person can tell you in his heart how he feels about another. And I'm telling you, my personal thing is, I love my family. I love my mom, dad, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles. But there's nothing like love of a Seawolf.
We didn't function as a group of people. We functioned as one person. We thought as one person. We fought as one person. And it didn't matter whether you were a cook or whether you were a steward or whether you were a yeoman or whatever you might be. If the need was there, that's the job you did. And we overlapped in just about every phase. So there was a big common denominator there. There was a lot of pride there. And our appearance was kind of unique too, because we flew in what we could find to fly in. We couldn't get flight suits because the Navy said that it wasn't authorized for our area. So, we just flew with standard Army issue equipment and flight gear and what uniforms we could find.
It was a very strong bonded brotherhood.
When you go in and somebody's taking fire and they're screaming for help and you scramble and you roll in, later bringing over some beer and dropping at your hoots, and you guys saved us yesterday. We really appreciate it. It just was it was almost inexplainable how the pride. I mean, look at it. It's still going all these years later.
I get the privilege to ask y'all some questions. Before I do, I wanted to read you a verse that stuck out to me regarding the word honor. I think often misunderstood word, but Jesus says this in John chapter 12. He says, if anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. And I found it interesting because this word honor is tied to self-sacrificial service. And so as a teacher here, I want to say this. This is the thing that I'm the most proud of that we do. And I want to say this to you. We honor you. We honor you. Thank you for letting us be a part of this story. We honor you. I'd love to invite you up now and give me the privilege of asking y'all a few questions. So y'all want to come up and we'll introduce you? So let's do this. Let's start with you, Gary. Will you introduce yourself and pass it on down the line?
Yeah, my name is Gary Eli. When in HAL 3, I went aboard Vietnam in January of 1970. I left in August of 1971. I was an AMS structural mechanic. Went to Detachment 9 as a door gunner in April of 70. Was there till I left.
I'm still Mark McGregor. Went to the squadron initially as maintenance personnel, worked in the shop for a while, worked my way into aircrew status. I was there in mid-71 until mid-72. I left a week before the squadron actually stood down and turned out the lights and everybody went home. So I was able to experience both the maintenance side and the aircrew side and was proud to have done it. Still am.
I'm Rick McAmoyle. I was there July of 71 to March of 72. I was the last flight of HAL 3, or at least on it. I was just an 18-year-old kid. Here, that one works.
It worked. It works.
Okay.
I'm Pat Sammel. I was in HAL 3 1968 to 1969. I worked in maintenance for a while, and we went out to Det 6, and then got called back to assist with a new squadron, Val 4. Proud to have been with both squadrons. And like Rick said, I still am very proud to have been a Seawolf.
My name's Gary Bork. I went to HAL 3 in Bentui in June of 1970 and left in 71. I was a member of the check crew. I was a training petty officer, and I flew cargo missions and post-maintenance test flights.
I'm Don Tex Morgan. I started off in maintenance in November 1970, left in November 71. I worked in maintenance, check crew, tracking crew, line crew. We all worked in all different positions, all to do the same thing. I went out on security details to a few of the detachments when things got really hot. I went to Det 3 with Gary Eli. The time that he was there, I got hurt, went back to Bentui, went into the training department, taking care of all these guys' flight hours and air medal information and stuff. And one of the guys, de-roast, went back to the States, and I got called into operations. I became a cryptograph operator and wound up with the title of the voice of the Seawolves. I was joiner secure. I talked with the pilots, I talked with SEAL teams, I talked with anybody and everybody that needed to get a hold of us and get our help. Was damn proud to do it.
Michael Harris. I'm not a Seawolf. I was with the Mobile Riverine Force, which was Task Force 117. Seawolves were Task Force 116. I'm down here with our bios working on a documentary similar to this one for our Mobile Riverine Force, a joint Army-Navy unit in Vietnam. I was a radioman second class, arrived in Vietnam in 1968, July, and left in July 69, and had these guys flying cover for us many times on the river, and thank you guys.
Well, we have some student questions, but I wanted to ask this. Honor, courage, commitment, of course, is the mission statement of the Navy. What does, it doesn't have to be everybody that answers this question. What does the word honor mean to you? And where have you seen it in your experience?
Excuse me, I will break up. Since our honor flight in San Diego, this squadron being basically introduced to the world, honor is we live by it. It's our core. And it's hard to really put into words exactly what it all means, but it's an internal driving force that just makes us the men that we are and how we deal with people in general. You have to come up with your own definition of honor, but when you have it and you feel it deep in your core, live by it.
You said pretty good.
so we got some student questions here. Let me grab a few. One. What was the biggest injury you ever had?
Biggest what?
Injury you ever had?
In the squadron?
Yes, sir.
I fell off the flight deck one night when they were scrambling at night, bunged up my knee. That was the biggest one I ever had. I was off my feet for 2 weeks recovering.
Well, I was fortunate. I was not ever wounded. Any kind of injury that I suffered was probably self-inflicted. So I did have an episode when I was up at Gary's detachment when I was a roving troubleshooter. Some of the jet fuel had gotten into the drinking water tanks, and that caused an internal injury that I will live with forever.
Yeah, I had close calls, just like Gary, who almost walked into the tail rotor. I was about that far away from it. One more step and I wouldn't be here today. But that was it. I fortunately came out physically well.
Well, I didn't, well, the only injury I suffered was during move. We moved from our base at Dongtam to an LST. They had my sea bag down the hatch, and the lock flipped over and caught me between the eyes. Had to go to the sick bay to get that one stitched up. But it was not really injury. It was more of a uh-oh.
I was never injured, but I was scared pretty bad. We had a little boat we used to take up and down the river, and me and 4 other guys took the boat down to a place called VC Island and shot the island up. On the way back, there was a PBR with the Arvins in it, or Vietnamese Navy, and they were shooting 50 cals within 3 foot of the boat. I thought he was going to kill us.
Well, I was never injured in any kind of actual combat, but working maintenance, there was a lot of things that we did that were probably not the safest things to do. And getting getting cut and getting like a broken finger or something like that was pretty much the norm for a lot of us. I guess the biggest injury was the loss of friends and brothers. And that injury still hurts today.
I was never injured either, and it's pretty remarkable. All these men up here were never seriously injured, but we could have been at any moment. And in my squadron, we had 400 men. I'm in my division, and in 8 months, we had 222 Purple Hearts. So it could have happened at any time. A funny incident with me, it could have turned out not funny, but we were in an ambush one night, pitch black, and I was firing a 50 caliber machine gun, and I hit something on the bank, and the tracer round came flopping back at me that I shot, and I actually ducked out of the way, and it went through the boat and landed on the other side. So, you know, probably wouldn't have injured me bad, but I would have been ashamed if I shot myself with my own machine gun.
Awesome, thank you. So it occurs to me that what might feel like a lifetime ago, you were very young men, not unlike a lot of the young men and women that I look around here and see. And so I think to myself, and then just had such a defining experience. And so the question I want to ask you as we close this time is, what is the experience that you think about when you think about your time with the Seawolves?
Turning point in my life. 1 year out of my life, I'm 73. 1 year out of 73 stands out. I think of it as the year that formed me into a man. And what we have as Seawolves, like it's been said in the documentary, and we have said it here, and we'll say it again. We love our families with all of our hearts, but ain't nothing like having a Seawolf as a brother.
I think my year with HAL 3 being probably the best experience of my life. It made me a man, yes, it did. But it also gave me a very big extended family. And we are actually closer than family. And it really, it's hard to put into words the feelings you have for this, for the rest of the guys in this unit. And the loss we feel as the guys move on.
Oh, there it went. Okay, now it works now. I was 17, graduated from high school, joined the Navy in July, went to boot camp in September, Memphis, Tennessee in February, Coronado in June, Vietnam in July. I joined the Navy because I didn't want to join the Army or the Marines to go to Vietnam. and my brother was in the Air Force, so I couldn't join the Air Force. I am extremely glad that I am a Seawolf, and I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
Well, ended up spending 21 years in the Navy, and the year that I spent as a Seawolf is probably the most defining part of my career. It's the part I look back on. If you go to my Together We Serve page on the internet, you'll see that I have that listed as my primary unit, even though I was in several other squadrons, different kinds of aircraft. But that was a defining moment, and the defining moment of that defining moment was the day that my buddy Goldie was killed. He had been training me to be a door gunner. He'd given me the day off, and he had taken another door gunner's place on a different helicopter, and the whole crew was lost that day. And so I'll never forget that.
I guess when I enlisted would be the most significant part of there was 4 of us come out of high school. We went to college for 1 year, decided that wasn't the program we was going to cut out for. And if everybody knows anything about the draft, it was either the Army or the Marine Corps, or you volunteered to go somewhere else like the Air Force, the Navy, or the Coast Guard. My dad told me, he says, son, join the Navy, you'll be on clean white sheets. You won't be in a foxhole nowhere. So I took his word. I joined the Navy. I got out of boot camp, went to the USS Coral Sea, was there about 3 months, and caught orders to Vietnam, HAL 3. I guess that was probably my most defining moment, I guess.
I've got one little incident. This is not actually with HAL 3. When I got out of boot camp in '66, I went to VT-23 in Kingsville, Texas. 2 years later, I get orders to Vietnam. I hear again, I'm like the rest of these guys. I joined the Navy to stay out of Vietnam. Oh well. However, 2 years later, Don Morgan comes to VT-23 in Kingsville, Texas. 2 years later, he follows me to Vietnam to HAL 3. We get together, what, 3 years ago? Yeah. 3 years ago, we run into each other again. And it's like we're brothers, twins.
We're twins.
Yeah, okay, yeah, stand up, Don. Yeah, we're twins.
Have you ever watched the movie Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito?
That's us.
That's me and Pat.
I want to say this again. We honor you. We're grateful for you. Thank you for the privilege of being a part of your legacy. We hope we serve it well. Students, when you get the opportunity, tell them thank you for your service. We honor you.
Also, just before we start the next slide, Kathy Bergstrom, can you stand up? She's a Good Star sister, and her brother, George Page, was one of the 44 that were killed in action. And so, yeah, he lived in Santa Monica. Yeah, they're from Santa Monica. So it's a huge touching point for here at Pacifica. So, yes.
The end of the Seawolves would mark the end of an unprecedented chapter in naval aviation history. Without fanfare, without uniform, without a welcome home, the Seawolves were lost to history. Though their legacy lives on in the tactical playbook of their successors, the HSC-84 Red Wolves and the HSC-85 Firehawks, the true stories of their courage, service, dedication, and brotherhood have been untold until now. Commanding Officer Robert Spencer said it best. We began as an unknown and unproven quantity with a little-known nickname, Seawolves. Together, we have built a squadron, and the word Seawolves has become synonymous with the term can-do. And Charlie knows well the feeling of a wolf's teeth. HAL 3 has established and perfected a new means of naval warfare. Located in Southern California, Pacifica Christian High School has done something unique. They've taken on the name of the HAL 3 Seawolves. Each year at the homecoming game, the Seawolves are honored during a halftime ceremony. The school hosts a Seawolf Luncheon, where the men give a presentation that includes a history of their squadron and what they did during the Vietnam War. For the Seawolves, it's an amazing day to be able to share with students, knowing their name and their legacy will live on forever.
And I think it's a great honor the way these people are acknowledging our service. When I got out of the military, it was quite a different thing, the way people felt about us, and it really feels great for them to feel the way they do nowadays.
Extremely honored, and it's a profound moment when this far along in my life, we're invited into a high school such as Pacifica Christian and realize that they have adopted our squadron and its history and its culture to form new leaders.
Hi, I'm Brendan. I am the head volleyball coach of the boys volleyball team here at Pacifica. And on these walls up here, next to this banner, your guys' banner, last year we now have 2023 CIF champions for the boys volleyball team. And of course, as any champions do, they receive a championship ring. And in designing these rings, I felt that it was important to acknowledge where we get our name, who our mascot actually is. So this particular ring is dedicated to each and every one of you, the fallen and those who are still here. On every single ring that every player will receive, on the bottom engraved is Helicopter Attack Light Squadron 3. So this is a small memento of our honor to you guys that will be forever enshrined in our trophy case. But I will have this on me for the rest of the day. I'd love for you guys all to see it. But it's just a small way of saying thank you.
Before I pray, they asked me to kind of sum up what we've heard today. And then after I pray, I have some general instructions for you. First, I just want to start by talking to the Seawolves and just to thank you again and to let you know that you are the best of us, and we thank you for your service, and we want you to know that you will not be forgotten. Because of what you did, men like my father came home. Because of what you did, prayers like my mother's were answered. Because of what you did, those men did not just come home. They had children. And now their children have had children. And now their children have had children. Don and gentlemen, you did not just save lives, you saved generations. There are not just individuals who walk now because of your sacrifice. There are families and generations of people who owe you gratitude. And for the rest of us, speaking to the students, a lot of what you've heard today may be very, very hard to hear. It may almost seem like you were listening to a foreign language because it's incredibly counter-cultural. If you listen to what our culture tells you, your life should be easy. You have a good life when it's easy. You are measured and your value comes from what you can consume or what you can buy. One of the greatest things that we can achieve in our culture, according to our culture, is fame or even infamy brought about by self-glorification. And on top of that, if you can mix in a little victimhood, then you have everything you would ever need. But when we look at the Seawolves, we don't see men who ran to ease. We see men who measured themselves with courage and sacrifice. They don't talk about what they bought or consumed, but what they gave and willingly laid down. They may not be famous, they're famous to us, but they served in anonymity, in near silent service, not to themselves, but to their brothers and to their country. And while counting the cost of their sacrifices and saving who they could and suffering all the while, they did not emerge from the circumstances of their service as victims, but as victors. Not as victims, but as victors. I encourage the students today to look to these men and their families as examples. Let them be your teachers. Let them be your coaches. When you take the field, the court, or a test, remember their courage, their camaraderie, and use that as the foundation that you build to success. All of us in here will have to walk through the dark valleys, but we know that we do not have to walk alone because Seawolves never walk or fly alone. God is with us, and they have walked before us to show us the way, and that will take us home. Individually, we may be undesirable, but together, like the Seawolves, we are undeniable. Again, individually, may be undesirable, but together, like our mentors and teachers, undeniable. So if you would join me really quickly in prayer. O Prince of Peace, we humbly ask for your protection for all of our men and women in military service. Give them unflinching courage to defend with honor, dignity, and devotion the rights of all who are imperiled by injustice and evil. Be their rock, their shield, and their stronghold, and let them draw their strength from you. For you are God forever and ever. Lord, we thank you for the Seawolves. We thank you for their service. We thank you for their example, and we thank you most of all right now for their presence. Help us to never take that for granted, Lord. We ask you to give them peace and courage and strength as you have in the past as they face the future. Lord, we thank you for the food, and we ask you to bless it. In Jesus' name, amen. Now the boring stuff. Not boring, sorry. The next thing is boring. This is actually good. We don't only want to associate the Seawolves with words, we want to associate it with deeds. So next week, the PPA Athletics Booster Club will be launching a Veterans Service Project in honor of the Seawolves. So we're going to be collecting much-needed items for the VA, and each grade level will be assigned specific items to bring. There will be a contest for which grade can bring in the most items from January 8th through the 19th. Apparently, there is a donut party up at Stakes for the PPA. Freshmen, 9th graders, you might want to write this down or put it in the phones that you've been trying not to play with for the last 30 minutes. Blankets. Freshmen are responsible for blankets. Sophomores, towels. Juniors, hoodies and sweatshirts. And seniors, you have you have sweatpants. All items should please be new and unused. Please do not bring your old sweatpants. There will be a collection bins at the carpool line starting on Monday morning. Show your Seawolf spirit and make a donation to the Veterans Service Project. Last thing, we are going to leave for lunch. As you leave for lunch, check in by grade on the white top. You'll have an hour or so to eat. Remember, you cannot leave campus. You are on campus today. There was an email by Mr. Hirsch that explained that. Please make sure that you talk to the Seawolves, thank them for the service, ask them for their names, shake their hands, look in their eyes. Thank you so much.